The sentencing. In a courtroom thick with a silence that seemed to swallow the very air, the once untouchable empire of Sean John Combs crumbled into dust. On this crisp autumn morning, before a packed federal courtroom in Lower Manhattan, the man the world knew as Diddy, a titan of hip-hop, a fashion mogul, a billionaire entrepreneur, was sentenced to 15 years in a federal penitentiary, bringing a dramatic close to one of the most high-profile legal sagas in modern American history. Judge Alistair Fitzpatrick, his voice steady and devoid of emotion, delivered the sentence, citing the systemic, violent, and deeply destructive criminal enterprise run by Combs from the pinnacle of his fame. The sentence comes after Combs, in a stunning reversal this summer, pleaded guilty to a raft of federal charges, including conspiracy to commit sex trafficking, racketeering, RICO, and interstate trafficking of firearms. "The law is a great equalizer," Judge Fitzpatrick stated, peering over his spectacles at the defendant. "Wealth, fame, and influence can build empires, but they cannot be allowed to shield an individual from the consequences of their actions. Your actions, Mr. Combs, were not mere mistakes or indiscretions. They were calculated, predatory, and inflicted profound and lasting harm on multiple individuals." Combs, 55, dressed in a somber, custom-tailored navy suit, stood to hear his fate. He showed little visible reaction, his face a mask of stoic resignation, a stark contrast to the charismatic, chest-thumping persona he had cultivated for decades. He was remanded into custody immediately following the hearing, his signature gold pinky ring and silk tie exchanged for handcuffs and a prison jumpsuit. The sentencing marks the culmination of a multi-year investigation by the Southern District of New York, in coordination with the Department of Homeland Security, which peeled back the glittering veneer of Combs's lifestyle to reveal what prosecutors described as a violent underworld operating in plain sight. The charges and the plea deal. The case against Sean Combs was built not on a single incident, but on a pattern of criminal activity spanning nearly a decade. The initial breakthrough came with a series of coordinated FBI raids on his Holmby Hills and Miami properties in March 2024. The raids, captured on helicopter footage that circled the globe, yielded a trove of evidence: illegally modified firearms, electronic devices, and what was described as a digital diary of criminality. The subsequent 87-page indictment laid out a devastating narrative. 1. The RICO charged Racketeer-Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. This was the cornerstone of the prosecution's case. It alleged that Combs used his business empire, including his record label Bad Boy Entertainment and his media network, Revolt, as fronts for a criminal enterprise. This enterprise, prosecutors argued, engaged in a pattern of racketeering activity including drug trafficking, money laundering, and acts of violence to protect its interests. 2. Conspiracy to commit sex trafficking. This was perhaps the most damning charge. The indictment detailed how Combs and his associates would lure young, aspiring models and musicians with promises of career advancement, luxury travel, and access to his exclusive world. These individuals, often vulnerable and from disadvantaged backgrounds, were then allegedly coerced into engaging in commercial sex acts with Combs's business associates and guests under the threat of violence and career ruin. 3. Interstate trafficking of firearms. Evidence showed that Combs and his security team illegally transported firearms across state lines, with weapons purchased in states with lax laws being taken to others with strict regulations. Including New York, several of these firearms were tied to alleged intimidation tactics and assaults. Facing a potential sentence of over 30 years if convicted at trial, Combs and his high-powered legal team, led by famed attorney Benjamin Brafman, engaged in months of intense negotiations with federal prosecutors. In July 2025, they reached a plea agreement. Combs agreed to plead guilty to 1 count of racketeering and 1 count of conspiracy to commit sex trafficking. In exchange, prosecutors dropped the firearms charge and agreed to recommend a sentence on the lower end of the federal guidelines, which is what culminated in the 15-year term. A critical component of the plea deal was Combs's agreement to cooperate fully with ongoing investigations. This clause has sent shockwaves through the entertainment and business worlds, as it suggests Combs may provide information on other high-profile individuals involved in or complicit with his activities. The victim impact statements. The emotional core of the sentencing hearing was the reading of victim impact statements. Several individuals, identified in court documents as Jane and John Doe, came forward to address Combs directly. Their testimonies painted a harrowing picture of psychological manipulation, fear, and shattered lives. One woman, her voice trembling but clear, described being flown to a private party on Combs's jet. "You presented yourself as a kingmaker, a godfather," she said, never looking directly at him. "But behind closed doors, you were a jailer. You took my dreams, my sense of safety, and my voice. For years, I believed no one would ever take my word over yours. You made me feel invisible. Another statement, read by a prosecutor on behalf of a male former associate, detailed an alleged violent assault orchestrated by Combs after a business disagreement. The message was clear: cross Diddy, and you disappear. Your power wasn't just in your money, it was in the terror you could instill with a single phone call. These statements were pivotal in shaping Judge Fitzpatrick's final decision. He explicitly referenced them, stating, "The court has a duty to not only punish the defendant but to bear witness to the profound human cost of his crimes." The courage of these individuals in speaking today underscores the true nature of the harm inflicted. The defense's arguments and Combs' apology. In his final appeal to the court, defense attorney Benjamin Brafman did not dispute the facts of the plea but framed Combs' life as a complex tapestry of immense achievement and profound personal flaw. He spoke of Combs' rise from the streets of Harlem to the pinnacle of global business, his philanthropic efforts, and his role as a father. "Your Honor, Sean Combs is not a monster," Brafman argued. "He is a deeply flawed man who, amidst building an unparalleled legacy, lost his moral compass. He has succumbed to the corrupting influence of absolute power and the sycophants who surrounded him." Brafman presented the court with over 200 letters of support from family members, former business partners, and even some figures in the entertainment industry, pleading for leniency and highlighting his charitable contributions. When given the chance to speak, Combs himself stood, his voice low and thick with emotion. "I stand before you today a humbled and broken man," he began. "I have spent a lifetime building a brand, but I failed to build a character that could withstand the temptations and the darkness. To the victims who spoke today, I hear you. I am sorry for the pain I have caused. I betrayed the trust of my family, my children, and the millions of people who looked up to me. There is no excuse. I must and I will accept the judgment of this court." Legal analysts noted that while the apology was contrite, it was likely too little, too late to significantly influence the sentence, given the severity and premeditated nature of the crimes. The broader implications: a reckoning for the industry. The fall of Sean Combs is more than just the downfall of one man, it is a seismic event that is expected to have far-reaching consequences. #MeToo and hip-hop. The case represents one of the most significant #MeToo moments within the hip-hop community, an industry often criticized for its insularity and reluctance to hold its most powerful figures accountable. It sends an unambiguous message that impunity, no matter how entrenched, has its limits. The end of an empire. The Combs business empire, valued at nearly $1 billion, now faces an existential threat. His stakes in brands like Ciroc Vodka and Delian Tequila are already being scrutinized by corporate partners. Revolt TV has distanced itself, and the future of Bad Boy's catalog is in jeopardy. A fire sale of his assets, including his sprawling real estate portfolio, is considered inevitable. The cooperating witness. The clause in his plea deal mandating cooperation is a ticking time bomb. Speculation is rampant about whom Combs might implicate, be it other artists, industry executives, or international business figures. Federal prosecutors now have a unique key to unlock further corruption at the highest levels of entertainment and commerce. Cultural legacy. For a generation, Diddy was the embodiment of the rags to riches dream, the bad boy who made good. That legacy is now permanently, irreparably tarnished. His music, once the soundtrack to celebration, will forever be viewed through the prism of his criminal conviction. Public and celebrity reaction. The public reaction to the sentencing has been a maelstrom of vindication, schadenfreude, and sorrow. On social media, the hashtag justice for the victims trended globally, with many expressing relief that the victims had been believed. The celebrity world, however, has been largely and tellingly silent. The A-list parties and public endorsements that once defined Combs' social life have vanished. A few figures have spoken out. Rapper and activist Killer Mike gave a brief statement: "This is a tragic day. It's a lesson on the corrupting nature of power. We must pray for the healing of the victims and for the soul of the man who lost his way." Cassie Ventura, Combs' former long-term partner who settled a separate, explosive lawsuit with him in late 2023, was not involved in this criminal case. Her attorney, however, released a simple, powerful statement: "Today, the truth prevailed. Our client continues to focus on her healing and her family." Conclusion. As the gavel fell in that Manhattan courtroom, it did not just mark the end of a trial, it marked the end of an era. Sean Diddy Combs, the master of reinvention, has faced a reality from which there is no rebranding. The king of the lavish, white party, will now spend the foreseeable future in the stark confines of a federal prison. His story will henceforth serve as a modern-day cautionary tale, a stark reminder that the pursuit of power, when divorced from ethics and humanity, can construct a throne that ultimately becomes a cage. The 15-year sentence is a punctuation mark in a life story that was once written in gold, but whose final chapters have been etched in the cold, unforgiving ink of the law. The reverberations of this day will be felt through courtrooms, boardrooms, and recording studios for years to come, a lasting echo of the fall of a titan.